And oh my god. Hi, Gavin, I guess.
Hi, Louie.
Okay, I know it's the start of spooky season. You're feeling really turned up.
I'm evil as can be. That's the...
I mean...
I just feel it coursing through my veins.
You are Jennifer Lopez, let's get loud right now. Come on, let's make it hot. Oh my god.
Other lyrics to that song.
Yeah. Our national anthem, of course. Yes.
And much like the national anthem, after Let's Get Loud, Let's Get Loud. Yeah, that's exactly how I sing the national anthem. So
yeah,
correct.
and then the kids are in the cages. Yeah.
I love a reference to two Super Bowls ago.
Okay, that was the best Super Bowl of all time.
Yeah.
I love also I've said the best Super Bowl of all time, and like I don't give a fuck who won. I don't know who played.
Oh, I don't know. It's soccer, right? Whatever.
Super Bowl is just about halftime for, and also we're not going to talk about last year's because the weekend, Snoozeville.
Yeah.
Like, make it gay or get it out of here.
I was gonna say that's the motto of the show. Make it gay
or get it out of here. Hi everyone, welcome to the Mixed Reviews.
We are a film podcast where we take a film subject such as an actor, director, or a mini genre, and we talk about what's good and we talk about what's bad. We throw in some history, put it in our culture, and I'm doing a little dance, a little safety dance.
Yeah.
Friends can't dance, and if they don't dance, then it's the Mixed Reviews. And yeah.
Especially if your name's Gavin.
Absolutely.
Yes, we take 2 weeks with our subject. We watch as much as we can, and we're back here to report to you what's good, what's bad, and a little bit, just like educate yourself, just learn something new. And ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else in between, like I mentioned up top, it's the beginning of our spooky season. Ooh. Gavin is more powerful than ever.
It's true.
He, his eyes are red, but that's just the drugs. So yes, spooky season. Every year since we've started, we've done 2 spooky episodes in the month of October. This will be our first. Thank you, everyone, for listening to our last episode, which was our All-Stars 100th episode.
Oh, my God. It was so much fun, and I'm so happy we were able to do it in that way, and sort of like, hopefully you guys had as much fun as we did.
I think the response from our All-Star winners was very good. I think people were really, into our picks. I'm also very excited that our the last social media post you made was about our all-star genre episode, which was zombies, which was my pick and also one of my favorite episodes of all time, and happens to be one of our spooky episodes.
Absolutely.
Who would have thought?
And what's great about that is we have all these genre breakdowns that you can go back and listen to, and hopefully they, maybe they've become part of your Halloween rotation. Who knows?
Knows?
If you're like me, you celebrate it all month long. So you got to fill those hours somehow.
Some way. So there was no poll because why would we have one?
Because it's our show.
Do we have any old business, Gavin, want to get to before we get into this new episode?
I do have one thing that I wanted to point out.
Okay.
I got a lovely piece of mail from Michelle Ice, who is a listener of ours, and she actually won the Parker Posey book way back when. I think that's almost a year ago now. I don't know.
No.
Close to it, right? Beginning of summer, maybe. But it's a wonderful Halloween card with her kids on it. So thank you so much, Michelle Ice. I don't know. This is very sweet. I've never received mail as part of a podcast, but like physical mail.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful spooky season.
Absolutely.
Your kids look really cute.
I too want to be Iron Man.
I too want to be a bat. No, I want to be the bat.
Oh, the bat.
The bat looks really nice. Especially the flip-flops. So, Gavin, who are we talking about to kick off this month of being spooky?
So this episode, we are taking it down to the dark and the deep depths. We're going into the genre, and we're coming out with the master of horror himself, John Carpenter. That's right. It is a director dissection.
Yes. John Carpenter, who we've maybe intersected a little bit. Obviously, he's got a whole movie about vampires. We did a vampire episode.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yes. We also saw Christine for our Stephen King episode.
And I watched Starman for the first time for our road trips on film.
Oh.
So, yeah.
So yeah, he's been in the periphery, but now we are diving deep. You, Gavin, clearly, obviously, have a more intimate, no, not intimate, but like a
We're
deeper,
best friends.
John, good old Johnny, Johnny Horror. No, but you like have seen a bunch of a lot of his movies I had not seen before. I famously am not a spooky bitch. So
You're an honorary one. And that's what's important.
And that's what's important. How did you come to know John Carpenter and his work?
Most likely the first John Carpenter film I ever saw was Halloween.
Okay.
I feel like that's most people's introduction to him. You know, it's and for him, it was really his first big breakthrough. Assault on Precinct 13 is certainly a classic in its own right, but Halloween was sort of where it's at. He redefined the slasher genre. Some say created the slasher genre. And I remember seeing it as a kid and it being so scary and atmospheric and tense. And
I can imagine I was 7 years old and I was like, whoa, this murder is sick.
I was like, get him.
Okay, pop off, Michael Myers.
Yeah, and so I just really remember that. And I think the thing that works really so well about that, too, is how well everything in that movie is working in conjunction with each other. You know, it's obviously a great, interesting story, but I think Carpenter's direction of the actors is really great. I think the cinematography is really great. You know, I've heard him talk about wanting to make sure that, you know, things were dark enough that at points you could only see bits of Michael Myers' face and that's it, or the mask, the shape, if you will. And yeah, I think that it's the complete package. It's the unit.
Right.
So it's a perfect place to get your start from and then move out from there. And maybe the second thing I saw was The Thing on TV, so not anywhere near as disgusting as it actually is.
Right, I was gonna say, what are they showing of The Thing on TNT?
Just a lot of reaction shots.
Okay. I was
cutaways.
Thoroughly disgusted. I like saw an interview with him where he was like, The Thing was one of the first times where like they were showing the monster.
Yeah.
Like typically, like they don't show the monster,
and
like,
that's why it got bad reviews at first, because people thought it was like too much style, no substance. But I think the thing that sells The Thing is the substance, is the fact that you really get to spend time with these characters. And we're going to get to that in a moment. But like, I think that's sort of what makes Carpenter special, is he truly is a character director. He really likes his subjects and he wants you to like them and he wants you to feel like they're people. Mm-hmm. One of the great things about Halloween is that the teens in Halloween feel like teens. They don't feel like, you know, adults playing kids. They don't feel like teens in an abstract. They're not like too clever for their age. They just feel like dumb pot smoking hypersexual teens.
Okay, don't call me that.
And that's why you're wearing a shirt that says it then.
Yeah.
And so I think what's great about The Thing is you have, you know, it's very testosterone laden, but it's like all these men trapped together, paranoid.
They want to kiss.
Yeah, they want,
but they can't because the monster.
The monster it passes through kissing and other ways. So I don't know. That's one of the things I think is sort of fascinating. What sets Carpenter apart from sort of all of the imitators or the people that want to do what he does, that, you know, as time goes on, have sort of taken up the mantle. And I was also thinking about this today. He's sort of the last of the old guard. You know, we don't really have that many genre filmmakers quite like him. There's the sort of the upstarts and the in-betweens, and like the in-betweens are like Guillermo del Toro, which we have a full episode on. The upstarts, people like Mike Flanagan, who I think is really great, or like Ari Aster, who personally I don't like, but lots of people love. Mm-hmm. So good on you. Get down, do your thing. But, you know, John Carpenter comes from this 70s era where you had these sort of genre filmmakers who have either left filmmaking behind, people like Brian De Palma or Wes Craven, who has passed away. And so what I think is interesting about John Carpenter is he still has a very public career, even though he's not making movies. He's actually touring as a musician.
Yeah.
But at 73, which is something he never thought he would do. But he's still sort of the face of this, whole. And when I say genre filmmaking, I mean, like dark sci-fi, horror comedies, that realm, special effects realm. And I think it's really interesting that he's just one of the few that's, because everybody else sort of moved off and into blockbuster. This is a guy that is a contemporary of Spielberg and is a contemporary of George Lucas, is a contemporary of James Cameron, who even worked on Escape from New York. But these are all people that moved into the realm of making these huge, gigantic movies. And anytime John Carpenter tried to move there, they bombed.
Flop Tina.
So I think he's a really fantastic, interesting director to talk about, because I don't know, he's solely this legacy. And almost every movie that he's made has been reappraised at some point and deemed so much better than it was received when it initially came out. And I think that's a fascinating thing. Yeah,
and obviously, like, the legacy continues. Obviously, we're in the middle of the new Halloween trilogy, which is not John Carpenter's Halloween, but he is a executive producer.
He's an executive producer, and he did the music, and he actually said in an interview he was going to do the thing that he normally does when he's a producer, because he produced,
get a paycheck, right?
Yeah, he produced the remake of The Fog, and he said the thing that he did for that was he showed up and said hello and left and accepted their check. And Jason Blum came to him and pitched him on the new Halloween movies, and he's like, yeah, fine. And Jason Blum, he basically said to him, and you can get off your ass and help us do it if you want it to be a good film, or you can just collect a paycheck. Oh. And he was like, you know what? He's right.
And he was like, okay, Dad, stop yelling at me. I want to go on tour.
So yeah, he's really fascinating. Plus, also, and I do just want to point it out there for anybody who listens to other podcasts, when we were trying to come up with a good subject to do for Halloween, it just seemed like no one else was talking about John Carpenter at all.
No one does.
Not a very popular film podcast that is breaking down each of his movies one by one, week after week, with a celebrity guest, maybe two people that I used to play trivia with. No one's doing it. And
so crazy.
And so we're just here to really fill that void with this one episode.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And I know that's what you're saying out there. So, you're saying thank you. And we just want you to know you're welcome.
So, Gavin, why don't we get into the rewind?
Absolutely. John Howard Carpenter was born January 16th, 1948, making him 73 years old. He was born in Carthage, New York, and he's the son of Milton Jean and Howard Ralph Carpenter, who was a music professor. Howard Ralph Carpenter moved them almost immediately to Bowling Green, Kentucky, in 1953.
And he moved us down to Bowling Green, Kentucky, right in the middle of the Bible Belt. So you're talking about fundamentalist Christians surrounding this kind of intellectual. And I think that every time I would wake up or be with my parents, I'd be listening to classical music. My father would teach me to play the piano and the violin, and I'd walk outside and it was a whole different world. And I wasn't sure where I belonged.
My parents were Yankees from northern New York, so we were out of place in Bowling Green. And when I was growing up, it was Jim Crow South. So it was pretty rough.
It's interesting listening to John Carpenter talk about his family life. He said, his dad taught him music. His mother taught him storytelling. And it's funny because I've heard him say that a couple different times, but I watched a recent interview where a interviewer pushed him on that and like, oh, storytelling, blah, blah. And he was like, yeah, she was mentally ill.
Huh.
So I was like, oh, okay.
He's like, if you want to fucking hear me talk about it.
I've actually seen the house that he grew up in
it's a log cabin, right?
Yeah. And currently resides like sort of in the middle of the highway. But I didn't get a chance to go in or visit because we drove by it.
I listen. There's a show, what's it called? Unmasking Halloween on The Ringer.
Yes, I listened to it, but years ago. So
I listened to 1.5 episodes. It's good. If you have time, go check it out. But what they were saying or what they reported was that they looked different than the people who were born there. They had long hair, darker hair. He said that we had big noses. They were just different looking people than the people who were born in Bowling Green. And on top of that, they had different values. And that was where kind of, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but the vision of yes, there is evil out there, but it is us, motherfuckers.
Yeah.
We are the evil.
Absolutely. He ends up being interested in film from a very early age, and he starts becoming sort of fanatic about certain directors. He really loves the Westerns of Howard Hawks, of John Ford, these people who really worked within the Hollywood studio system that we now revere as sort of the masters. And he remembers seeing the 1950s low budget The Thing from Another World, and it like terrifying him as a kid. That'll come back. And so he ends up making, horror short films on 8mm film before even getting into high school.
My father didn't want to take 8mm movie camera pictures anymore and project them. He didn't care about that. He got into stills. So he said, "You take this." So I took his movie camera and shot little films around my house with my friends, and I learned some valuable things. I learned some editing things and stop motion, but thank God no one's ever going to see these things.
I'd direct my friends to come into the shot, I'd stop the camera, I'd turn around, show a monster or something, then I'd turn back and have the friend react. My father said, "Look, you know what this is editing. This is an editing machine. You just go click and you can cut the film." And I realized, oh, I can have my friend come all the way in, do his whole, see the monster, do his whole reaction, run out. Then later on, turn around and shoot the monster. So it was a good education.
He attends Western Kentucky University, where his father was the chair of the music department, and then he ends up transferring out to University of Southern California's School of Cinematic Arts during 1968. And that, he said, the film department was put in the same building as the horse stable.
Right.
So it was sort of a lawless, free land. But he says, they taught you everything there. You had to learn everything.
Imagining it gets him and the horse girls.
Yeah, exactly. If that's not a villain origin story, I don't know what it is.
Hello.
And, you learn sound, you learn cinematography, you learn editing, you learn directing, and he said he thought he was pretty good at all of it except for sound. But he eventually ends up dropping out so he can direct his first feature film. Small potatoes.
Right. He moved to California with some of his buddies from Kentucky, right?
Yes.
And these are people that and we'll see this throughout his career. He works with the buds. They're the boys in the band, they're in the band.
He finds people he likes, and he continues working with them ad infinitum.
Yeah,
that's
truly.
Which I love. I love a person who's loyal. He does an 8-minute short while he's still in college in 1969 called Captain Voyeur. You can watch it now on YouTube. It's fine. It's an 8-minute student film, but you can see some of the techniques that he eventually ends up using in Halloween. The next year, he ends up collaborating with producer John Longenecker. He co-writes, edits, and does the music for this film called Resurrection of Bronco Billy. It wins the Academy Award for Best Live Action Short Film, but also it doesn't really go anywhere.
Well, it's wild. I mean, I don't know. I truly don't know what happens now if you win Best Oscar for Live Action Short. I imagine it'll be easier for you to get a Netflix deal, perhaps. Back then, I truly have no fucking idea.
And it's funny because Universal did buy it for, a theatrical release to play it as a short in front of movies. And they did it for 2 years, but no one talks about it.
Right.
So,
no one gave a fuck.
His first major film as a director is Dark Star from 1974. It's a science fiction comedy that he co-writes with Dan O'Bannon, who would later go on to write Alien, and famously, probably apocryphal, says, he went to a screening of Dark Star and nobody was laughing, and he said to himself, "If I can't make them laugh, I'll make them scream."
Okay. Do we think that Dark Star is funny?
I think it's got funny moments. I think it's got a very Slackers sort of.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was I think it's a stoner movie, but I don't know that it's a funny movie. For me, I just remember the most, it's the Phoenix asteroids. I'm floating. And I was okay, you're being one with space. I get I don't remember a lot of funny moments. They're arguing with machines a lot.
I mean, did you not find the beach ball alien hilarious? Because I kind of did.
The thing that I most find interesting about this is literally the beach ball alien is played by his friend who came with him to LA.
Yes. Nick Castle, who eventually goes on to be the original Michael Myers.
My favorite part of that movie, just last thing, is the song.
Yes.
The song that begins and closes, it's so good.
And it was written for the movie.
Yeah, it's
So,
great. It's great.
The what's funny is like that was originally done sort of as a student film, and it was bought by a studio, and they gave them more money because they were like, make it longer. And that's when they added in the beach ball alien stuff and whatnot. And Dan O'Bannon said that it went from being a really great looking student film, like a professional looking student film, to being a bad looking professional movie.
Yeah, it's very
Holly Hobby, hokey pokey.
Very go back to Party City.
Yeah. Carpenter ends up doing the musical score as well as writing, producing, and directing. Dan O'Bannon acted in the film and did the special effects, which actually ends up getting him hired to work on Star Wars. Just a little film. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it. Doesn't really go anywhere. No one's ever heard of it.
I love indie cinema.
Yeah, exactly. His next film was Assault on Precinct 13 in 1976. It's a low-budget thriller that's, influenced by a lot of Howard Hawks' Western. Rio Bravo's like the main sort of influence in that movie. And Carpenter, once again, totally multitasking. He wrote it, he directed it, he scored it. He also edited the film using the pseudonym John T. Chance, which is actually John Wayne's character from Rio Bravo.
Lol.
And he considers it his first real film because it was like the first time things were scheduled and they were like, we have to shoot this now and we have this set during this time.
Is that John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13? No, it's not.
Yeah.
Okay. That comes with Halloween, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's also the first time that he works with Deborah Hill, who like is the biggest collaboration of his entire life.
I know.
Yeah. She's really great.
I said I know in a kind of sad way because I just found out that like I thought they were still together, but like they broke up very early in their career.
Oh, Deborah. Yeah. I mean, she's dead.
Well,
yeah. Okay.
Not like,
yes.
I was listening to that podcast about Halloween and he was like, and then he fell in love with someone else. And I was like, damn, boy.
Yeah.
But Assault on Precinct 13, I LOL'd at the little girl getting shot.
Which is funny because it was very controversial for a long time. A lot of people thought that was like too much crossing a line. And I'll admit, sometimes when I'm watching a horror movie and a child gets menaced, I am not into it. But that is like so clearly like darkly comic.
But also then one of our listeners, followers was like, that is literally Kim Richards.
Yes.
And I have no idea about these people.
Oh, I don't do Housewives either, but like...
No, but like, here's the thing.
She's also like Paris Hilton's aunt?
Yeah. Paris Hilton's aunt, but also at the time was a pretty famous child actor.
Yeah.
And so I was like, fuck, I'm like blind in both of these areas. I didn't know that she was a famous fucking kid actor in a lot of these movies, and I didn't fucking know she's a housewife. Just a little quick tidbit, the housewives gals,
they're horrific.
Hello. What did you think about Assault on Precinct 13?
I had seen it before. Funny enough, I had seen it before as like maybe a young film student and kind of been like, ugh, whatever, like exploitation movie. I'd been seeing a lot of them in that time period, and I was like, oh, I don't really love this. And I rewatched it for this, and I was a little shocked at how...
Why, or what made you think that, or I'm surprised to hear you like say exploitation film. Was it because of the like bad guys who were like trying to take over the...
Because it felt very like... I think during that time period, I'd seen things like The Warriors and things where like it's a lot of like, oh, this inner city crime.
The undesirables.
Like, yeah, exactly. Because it's not nihilistic in a way that, like, nihilism turns me off. Mm-hmm. Like, I hate nihilistic horror. And that's part of my problem with Ari Aster, is that I find his films, like, come from a very, like, I hate humanity sort of place. And I'm like, I get it, but also, like, I live it. So, like,
so what are we going to do?
Yeah, film is escapism for me. Thank you. But I think at the time I felt it was really nihilistic. And maybe it was things like killing the child. And maybe it was, things like the odd treatment of like people die in that movie. And it's almost like not a big deal. Like, and I feel like that's where he's like really working his writing chops, because he's like, I want you to care about these characters. These other ones don't matter. And I feel like later on he's like, oh shit, no, you should kind of care about everybody. Right. That way.
It's interesting because like, I was like, oh, there's some social commentary here.
Right.
But it feels, at least to me, and I watched it once in this marathon of us watching all these movies. And so I may be missing something, but I was like, in the end, I was like, wait, what the fuck are we saying? Like, because later in his movies, it often feels like he's taking the quote undesirables and like they are the champions of the movie. They are the ones who are like, this life sucks. But in this movie, he's placing the protagonist in this black sheriff character, and they're like it's literally protecting the police and like the way that they run things. And so to me, I was like, wait, what is he saying here? Like, it feels a little bit, it kind of like sounds like all lives matter type shit to me.
Yes.
And I'm what is going on? Because it's like, these prisoners we need to protect because we need to treat them badly, and it can't be these other folks. And so
we're the only ones who can do that. Yeah.
And
I can see that. I can see what you're saying.
It's so, and again, I'm sure there's been a lot more scholarship on this movie, but like in the end, I was just like, what?
Now what?
Power failure?
The streetlights are still on.
I'll call Ellendale on the two-way in my car.
Cheney just fell down.
He didn't fall. He was shot.
What? But there wasn't any sound.
Silencers. They're using silencers.
See, all to say, I think the movie's a little like weird, not super clear. As we go on, like at the peak of his career, he's very clear about like his social commentary.
Yeah.
And I think it's like very
I think
well
there's
done.
only one other area that it gets really muddled, and we'll get to it. But
Yeah. But they did a remake of this movie, right?
they did with Ethan Hawke. I've never seen the remake
Neither.
ever. I'm sure it's a thing that happened.
There you go.
That was one of the movies he said that like they gave him a nice check, and so
He's like, I love these types of remakes.
I do want to say that like he made it look like a real movie. Like it's a very low budget. You know, it is. It's like literally stretching every dollar, and that movie looks so good. Part of the reason why the movie looks the way it does is because, barring Dark Star and his final film, The Ward, everything that he's ever shot was in anamorphic 235:1 or greater aspect ratio. And he says that
Of course.
35 millimeter Panavision anamorphic format is the best movie system there is, and he prefers it both to like 3D or digital. That means something to somebody, Louie. How dare you? How dare you stare at me like
I love anamorphics. Also, they were my favorite young adult novels.
I was going to say, you read all those books.
Yeah.
You read all the ones where they had all the teens turned into cameras.
You know what, bitch? I have read all those books, so don't come at me.
The next thing Carpenter does is he writes and directs a Lauren Hutton thriller, Someone's Watching Me, which is a TV movie. And it's a television film about a single woman who's being stalked in LA, and no one will believe her except for her, which is very cool, lesbian assistant played by Adrienne Barbeau.
Okay.
Yeah. It's way ahead of its time because it's literally about men not believing a woman when they should, when she's like, I'm being stalked, please do something about it. And it's got very modern, you know, things like she meets Adrienne Barbeau, and Adrienne Barbeau like casually slips in she's a lesbian, and she's like, don't worry, you're not my type. And that's it. Like, that's fine. And nobody's like judgy about it or anything. And I really liked this movie, and it's stylish and it's sleek. And I think it's maybe the thing that made him realize that like killing adults isn't as much fun as killing teens.
Okay.
So like, because adults are like complicated.
Yeah. Adults suck.
Yeah.
So.
And, it was considered a lost film for a long time, but it's no longer, it came out on DVD, and I highly recommend seeing it.
Okay.
I don't think Lauren Hutton's ever been better. I love Lauren Hutton in this movie. There's a great moment where she comes home at one point after the police are like, you gotta stop bothering us. And she hears the shower running, and she like walks into the bathroom, and the room is just filled with steam, and written on the mirror is like, nobody believes you. And
That's scary fucking shit.
And I was just like, I was like, good for you, Carpenter, getting those scares in early on. He also sells a script called Eyes, which eventually turns into the 1978 thriller Eyes of Laura Mars, featuring Faye Dunaway and Tommy Lee Jones. I also recently just watched this, not for this episode, but I just wanted to see it. And it technically becomes Carpenter's first major studio film of his career. And he has said several times, if you want to break into the film industry, write a script so good they're willing to pay you a ton of money for it. And then
Oh, is that all?
Write a great screenplay that every studio must have now. Must have right now. Sell it for a lot of money, okay? Make a lot of money. Then write another one that they must have. And then you say, I direct this one. That's how you get it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Is that what happened with Halloween?
So that leads to 1978's Halloween. It was a huge commercial success. It starts the slasher genre, essentially. And originally it was this idea suggested to him by producer Irwin Yablans. Great name.
Yeah.
It was called The Babysitter Murders. And he was just like, let's do a movie about a guy killing a bunch of babysitters. And Carpenter was like, okay.
But let's make him a child.
Well, and Yablans was like, let's put it on Halloween. And Carpenter was like, cool, nobody's really done that before. But Carpenter, to his mindset, is like, I'm just going to make this exploitation movie. He still refers to it just as an exploitation movie.
Wow.
He's like, yeah, it's just a movie where a bunch of teens get killed. He's like, I wanted to make it like a haunted house, like the kind of haunted houses I went to as a kid, where you walk in a room and something pops out at you, which is so funny because a lot of the scares and a lot of the things that are in this movie are much more subtle, I think, than what eventually comes after. Right. It's like people took that template and were like, no, just every 3 seconds have something pop out. Also, there was a bit of controversial. Mm-hmm. Bob Clark had made this film called Black Christmas in 1974. Carpenter and Clark were actually working on another film after that. This is according to Bob Clark. And I want to say this is really cool of Bob Clark because for years I'd always heard he stole Bob Clark's idea and made Halloween, and now people give it all the credit. But Bob Clark and Carpenter were working together, and Carpenter was like, are you going to make a sequel to Black Christmas? Bob Clark was like, no, I don't want to be a horror movie director anymore. And Carpenter was like, well, here's an idea for a sequel. And he basically like regurgitated the plot of Halloween. And so Bob Clark was like, he didn't steal my idea. Like, he had the idea. It was all there.
Right.
Like, maybe there's some inspiration about a killer stalking people, but like, that's not the same thing as like taking someone's idea. So cool of Bob Clark to set the record straight. He did that in 2005. I believe he's since passed. Also, what a fucking weird career, Bob Clark. Bob Clark, who went on to direct A Christmas Story and Baby Geniuses. So
casual. He's like, I don't want to do horror. I just want babies to be talking.
Exactly. I want to do Porky's, which is also something he directed. Halloween is written by Carpenter and Deborah Hill, with Carpenter doing the music as well, which he says he like slightly stole from Dario Argento's Suspiria and also took bits from The Exorcist, but wholly original, and it's his idea.
He says, like, you know, when people ask him about like the synthesizer and stuff, because he's known for that. I mean, the Halloween theme is like what he's known for, and he's like, listen, people were using synthesizers before I was. Yeah. It literally just came down to finances,
right? And like famously, Wendy Carlos, who wrote like a bunch of the music for Kubrick between 2001 with all the classical covers and Clockwork Orange, so. He's not the first. Tangerine Dream did the score to Sorcerer, like,
and he's been very like vocal. He's like, I didn't invent synthesizers. Yeah. It just so happens that like melody has become so popular, and it broke through into the pop and the culture. Like, there are movie music and songs, especially when it's just literally like a little it's like what, 3 fucking notes. Like, it's so popular.
And also he ended up using like bongo rhythms for the like background, but played on the synthesizer. So like it's that tempo, that like fast tempo that keeps it going. The movie is made for $300,000, which is nothing. It grosses $65 million, which makes it one of the most successful independent films of all time.
Did I hear right that they said, if you can make this movie for $300,000, we will call it John Carpenter's Halloween, and thus is born his whole thing.
Well, and that's sort of what he becomes famous for, because after Halloween, it opens him up to being sort of uncompromising if he doesn't have to be. His big thing is that he gets final cut on his movies. Mm-hmm. The movies that he makes are what you see in the end are what he wanted you to see.
Right.
And the studios couldn't interfere with that. And that impresses me. And that's why he put his name above the titles, as well as a tribute to all the filmmakers that came before him, that, you used to see like John Hawke's Rio Bravo, or like Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, or, you know, and Orson Welles's Chimes at Midnight. And he's not necessarily putting himself on a pedestal with them, but what he's saying is like, well, if they did it, I can do it too.
Right.
It's an homage.
And also, like, this is my vision.
Right.
And for better or worse, and let me tell you, honey, as we get through time, there are some that are not better.
I was lucky enough to get John Carpenter's out of Halloween because I basically did that movie for no money. So I said, look, I'm not going to charge anything, but you got to let me have final cut, and you got to let me put John Carpenter's on it, because I wanted to, you know, get my name up. And movies are collaborative, man. I mean, you know, I don't walk in and say, you do this here and put the camera there. I mean, it doesn't work that way.
But Halloween, as most people know, is a film about Michael Myers, who is a young child who stabs his sister to death and then goes into a psychiatric institution, and years later comes out on Halloween night and begins stalking the babysitters of Haddonfield. That's the original pitch. No sister, no, you know, that stuff comes later when you start getting into the mess of sequels and whatnot.
Yeah.
Excuse me,
Oh,
Laurie.
Mr. Brackett, I'm sorry, Mr. Brackett.
Oh, I didn't mean to startle you.
That's all right.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
Yes, sir. Nice seeing you, sir.
In 79, he begins his first collaboration with Kurt Russell ever. He does the television movie Elvis.
Right.
Which is about 3 hours without commercials.
You're fucking kidding me. 3 hours?
Yeah. Because it's like a quote-unquote miniseries. I, for the most part, liked it. I do think it's funny that the producers hired him because they heard that he wrote the music to Halloween and were like, oh, he could work with a musician. Like, he could...
They, like, had no idea that Hollywood was going to be so big. That's why he had signed on to do Elvis, right?
Yeah.
So I can only imagine he's like, oh, fuck, I just made $65 million, and now I got to make this...
Well, because the first reviews that came out for Halloween were terrible. And then it got pulled and re-released. And everybody re-reviewed it and was like, it's great. And he said, suddenly 3 weeks into shooting Elvis, all these studio execs started showing up to the set, to the shooting of it. And we're like, hey, what are you, like, what are you shooting here? And I do like that this is how he meets Kurt Russell. He has said several times he really likes Kurt Russell because...
His best friend, Kurt Russell.
He really likes Kurt Russell because he was Disney trained.
Right.
Which means, you know, he showed up on set. He knew all his lines. He knew what he was doing. And he said it's this very old school. He said the only time he really ever experienced that was Bridges on Starman as well. And so I think that's really fascinating that he's like, he likes a hard worker. He likes somebody who's come in and already started doing the work. And so it doesn't make his life more difficult.
Also, Jeff Bridges, Kurt Russell, the same person. But like truly both handsome, you know, they were at their prime, I would say, like then,
yeah,
right? Like
Jeff Bridges, gorgeous.
Yeah.
Kurt Russell,
hot.
Gorgeous.
Hot. So
basically he's like, I can make whatever I want. And the next thing he decides to make is a small ghost story called The Fog. In 1980, he and Hill co-write this movie, and it's based off of like old EC comic Tales from the Crypt and this movie called The Crawling Eye about a monster that like lives in a cloud. And he found working on this movie sort of unusually difficult because he realized after the first screening that it just wasn't scary. And so they went back and reshot a bunch of stuff.
That was a troubled film. We had to recut it and reshoot, and it didn't work the first time we finished it. I said, this is not scary. In the old days, they used to give you insert days. So they give you one day after it's all over. They pay for it, and you can come in and shoot stuff to fix what you've done. And value that time, value that, because that can change a lot of things. You can make a scene that's slow, pop a little if you have something going on right in the middle. Just take the attention away from it.
I think this is like the first movie where we actually see like some of like the grosser stuff that we will come to see.
Which is funny.
Right?
Because I mean, there's stuff that happens in it. There's like gross thing. There's no blood in the movie. There's never any blood.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
Yeah.
They're just like kind of soggy, gross pirate guys, right?
The plot of The Fog is it's the 100th anniversary of this town, Antonio Bay, and this eerie fog rolls in, and it's carrying the ghosts of leprous pirates who were wronged by 6 conspirators in this town to steal their gold.
Mm-hmm.
And
they're basically here to kill 6 fuckers.
Yes, and it's funny because it's like a very haunted housey type movie, very strange, lots of strange occurrences. That's what I think I like the most about it, is there's lots of odd things that happen on the lead up, like the gold coin that turns into like
driftwood.
I like all these like odd occurrences. I like when things are a little less explainable and a little more just like, oh, there's some real dark magic here.
What I'll tell you is there is a really hardworking fog machine. Okay.
Oh yeah, several. And it's funny because they actually spent more money on the advertising of the fog than they spent on making it, because they would actually sometimes even ship fog machines to theaters.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
And what a good little gag.
That's a gag.
It's funny, I saw it a couple years ago at Brooklyn Academy of Music on maybe the worst print I've ever seen a movie on. Like, just real damaged. And it's funny because when Hal Holbrook realizes why they're there, Hal Holbrook plays the priest in the film, who's trying to, and by the way, like amazing cast.
Jamie Lee back again.
Yeah, Jamie Lee back, and her mother Janet Leigh, Hal Holbrook, Adrienne Barbeau, Tom Atkins. So just sort of a murderer's row of like people who would either become John Carpenter staples or people who are already John Carpenter staples, including his then wife Adrienne Barbeau, who he met on the set of Someone's Watching Me. When Hal Holbrook discovers why these leprous pirates are coming for their revenge, the film broke and everything went black in the theater. And I was like, I leaned over to my friend Ross and was like, now would be a good time for them to start a fog machine.
I was like, that was the true gag. And then the pirates started walking in.
Sadly,
no pirates.
No pirates. Didn't happen. The film was made for a budget of $1 million, but grossed $21 million in the United States alone. Carpenter himself has said The Fog is not his favorite film, but he considers it a minor horror classic.
I liked it.
Yeah. Just a minor horror classic. Mm-hmm. The next thing he does in 1981 is he moves a little further out of horror, and he moves into the science fiction genre. He does Escape from New York. Kurt Russell is back. Donald Pleasance is back. Adrienne Barbeau is back. Tom Atkins is back. You know, it's literally all these people. This is his first film with Harry Dean Stanton, who will pop up again. And then like Lee Van Cleef and Ernest Borgnine are in this movie. And it was a big commercial success, grossing more than $25 million, and critical acclaim. It's this movie about this criminal named Snake Plissken. I'm sure you've heard that name before at some point in your life. One of the most famous roles Kurt Russell ever plays. He's an eye-patched criminal, and he's been dispatched into New York City, which has been turned into
prison.
One giant prison. And he's sent there in order to save the president, who's
crashed.
His plane was hijacked, and they sent him on like a escape pod into New York, and Snake Plissken's job is to get him out within 24 hours or he'll die.
Right.
Yeah, and so Snake has to get in and get out, and it's basically a long chase scene. You know, it's in a way it is its own road movie, and he's traversing this like not post-apocalyptic but close enough post-apocalyptic New York, which is, you know, the only, like, it's a prison island filled with only criminals.
But it's like a prison island, but like they're like, do whatever you want and there we don't give a fuck. Like it's lawless.
Yeah.
And so there's a bunch of like kooky books hanging around. My favorite was the cab driver guy.
Ernest Borgnine, yeah. He's real great in it too. And it's, I mean, there's that movie is a wild. I've seen that movie so many times. My dad loved that movie.
I love that they also have like their little gladiator arena.
Yep.
Where like they're just like, let's have like sports but dying.
Apparently so there is a fight scene between Snake Plissken and a real wrestler.
Yes.
And apparently during the fight scene the wrestler just kept getting more and more rough, and finally Kurt Russell had to tap him on the genitals to tell him like, relax, like it's fake. Like,
You know that thing when you tap someone on the genitals to let them know?
That's how you let them know.
Yeah.
That's
Yes. Hey, relax.
Yeah. We as gay people get to choose who we tap on the genitals.
Thank you. It's finally your turn to breathe, Simon.
Oh my god.
And that's Love, Simon.
And that's Love, Simon. Escape from Love, Simon.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, what did you think? I'm curious, what did you think of it?
I'd never seen it before.
Yeah.
I honestly I'd seen Snake before. There's a pizza place in San Francisco called Escape from New York Pizza. That was my closest connection to it. But yeah.
What was the pizza toppings like cigarette butts and needles?
That was my favorite combo number one. But yeah, I thought it was again a little bit. I was like, okay, they've made the leader because the Duke, right?
Yes, played by Isaac Hayes.
Yes. I don't know. I don't think that I'm as enamored with it as everyone else is. I think it's a slick looking movie.
Yeah.
I think it's really stylish. Certainly a lot of one-linery type bad. Here's my thing. I think a lot of these movies, I'm like, John Carpenter is just a boy playing with toys. They're so I don't want to say juvenile, but a lot of it is this looks fucking cool. Let's do this. He's just playing.
Yeah.
And it's
I can see what you're saying.
It's very but it's also kind of innocent. It's just there's no rhyme or reason. This just looks fucking cool. They're like, we're gonna land a plane on the Twin Towers. It's just all when they realize they're like, whoa, it's so cool, but I will say it seems like he has an idea, and a lot of his movies are like this, where it's there needs to be some sacrifice. There needs to be something in the end where it's I'm actually not just a good guy, but I have a conscience or a moral compass. And so even though Snake is, quote, a bad guy, he is a criminal. In the end, he's like, fuck this tape and fuck the United States.
Yeah.
Credits. So I think it looks and feels to me a very formative, again, all these earlier works to me feel like building blocks to what is to come, where he really gets in his groove. Because I think I am a little cooler on these earlier things.
Interesting. But which is funny because these are sort of the things that make him.
I know that people love.
Yeah.
But I also wonder if there's just a cultural thing. When you, I understand why if you saw Halloween when it came out and there's nothing out there like it.
Yeah.
Kind of same thing with this movie. There's not a lot of stuff like this out there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there are a lot of things that he ends up pioneering. I mentioned James Cameron worked on the film. They helped do the cityscape during the him flying through. And what's interesting is literally what that is because it would have been too expensive to animate, is they took a model of the city and spray painted it black and then covered all the edges of the building with tape.
Huh.
And so that's literally just a camera flowing through so it looks like a grid.
Right.
And, that's really smart. But then James Cameron takes that sort of knowledge and goes on to make Alien or the parts of the models end up used in Blade Runner, Ridley Scott's.
Right.
So he is sort of pioneering these ideas that other people then take and run with and become cinema classics.
Right, for sure.
Wow, Snake Plissken, all right. What you doing in here with a gun, Snake?
Looking for somebody.
Who?
The president.
Come on. He really here?
Somewhere.
His next film, 1982's The Thing, huge production values, innovative special effects by Rob Bottin, visual effects by mad artist Albert Whitlock, and Ennio Morricone does the score, which is funny because I remember him saying he's yeah, I love doing the music, but if someone if Ennio Morricone comes to me and is I'm doing the score, I'm like, yeah, you are. I'll step aside.
I think I will say that there are some times where I think when he does the music, it's a miss for me. I'm okay, we get it. Synthesizer, ding, 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 ding. I get it. I was gonna say The Thing is disgusting, but I think it's one of his most successful movies to me.
Yeah.
And I don't mean money making wise. I think it it really works. I was this is horrible. I hate watching this, but it sticks the landing.
I knew it'd be a little ooey gooey for you.
It's supremely ooey gooey. It is I was looking away. It's so graphic. It is so disgusting. And again, that's why I was like, God, he's such a fucking child. Like, this is just like, what if we make like the head? Oh, I was telling Derek, I was like, I hate the thing where it's like angry mouth inside of another angry mouth.
Yeah.
I hate that so much. And he loves it.
I mean, I do too. I'm with Derek on this one. The Thing is a remake of Howard Hawks' film The Thing from Another World. As I mentioned, he saw it as a child and it scared him to death. But it's actually more faithful to the novella. It's based on Who Goes There by John W. Campbell. And it's really about these men trapped in this Arctic research space. These men played by Wilford Brimley, Richard Dysart, Charles Hallahan, Keith David, Richard Masur, and Kurt Russell. And they're all, this alien thing escapes and it can basically take over people's bodies and turn them into grotesque monsters one by one as it passes through each person. So it's supreme paranoia as they're trying to figure out, like, what the fuck's going on, what killed everybody, and how they can destroy this thing before it gets out of this Arctic base and takes over the world.
Right. It's very classic, like, it's Lilo and Stitch, where the alien lands and it's like, oh, fuck, of all places to land, they land in the Arctic, and those fucking, Norwegian people blow it up, and now she's alive, and a little husky baby is carrying the disease. Ugh. I really liked it. It's... who is the final guy with Kurt Russell?
Keith David.
I think they're so good. He's really good.
Yeah, I love Keith David.
And they, again, like, these movies, it's ridiculous. It's horrible, horrifying. But in the end, it's about these two guys looking at each other. They don't trust each other because one of them could be infected, one of them could be an alien. But they just have, like, this understanding, like, they're like, oh, well, this whole place is on fire, but it won't be on fire for long.
Right.
And we're going to either freeze, or you're going to kill me, or I'm going to kill you.
Yeah. And there's no good ending here.
Yeah.
But it will end.
Yeah. And it's just like, kind of like, this was the first movie that I saw. I was like, I think the social commentary is spot on.
Yeah.
The paranoia of, like, each other, what happens when, like, we're in crisis, and, these guys who are isolated, obviously, but, like, in theory, they should be a team. They're in Antarctica. They're not trapped there. They're working.
Right.
They're just trapped there because they're in fucking Antarctica. But they don't act like a team. They don't act. They are acting like they fucking just found this crazy alien, and it's like taking them each over one by one. And I love the interpersonal dynamics of everyone in this movie, and how they have to, or they don't learn how to work with each other. So this movie worked really well for me, even though it's disgusting.
It contains one of my favorite lines in it, which is like, I don't want to spend winter taped to this fucking couch.
Yeah. If you don't mind, sirs.
It's very graphic, very sinister, very bleak. It forms the first part of his informal apocalypse trilogy, which then is Prince of Darkness and In the Mouth of Madness. And it's a huge bomb. It's a huge failure, like, financially, commercially. People are like, oh, it's so gross. Like, why all the special effects? And also, 2 weeks before it came out, E.T. comes out.
Okay, well.
And people are like, we like the friendly alien.
They don't like the one that rips dogs in half? That's so crazy.
God, what was happening to him? I think if it had more time to finish, it would have looked and sounded and acted just like Bennings.
I don't know what you're saying.
That was one of those things out there, trying to imitate him, Gary.
During the filming of The Thing, Universal was like, hey, would you do Stephen King's Firestarter? And he was like, sure. And they were like, oh, just kidding. This didn't do well. And no one will hire him. And eventually Universal is like, okay, we'll throw you a bone. Why don't you make the Stephen King movie about the car, the evil car?
Yeah.
So in 1983, he does an adaptation of Stephen King's Christine. It's literally that. I don't even think we need to tell you any more of the plot. It's about a young teenage boy who's a nerd who buys a car, and it's evil, and it's Carrie, but the car is Carrie.
Right.
It starts killing all the people he doesn't like. It's got really great special effects. I really like his score, but it's a no for me, dog.
I didn't rewatch it for this. I remember liking it for the Stephen King episode.
Yeah, it's fine. It's like inoffensive. I would say. I think it's highly watchable. I think the car itself is interesting, and all the shots of like after the car is destroyed,
coming back,
is really cool. And they really found an effective way to do that by like casting the car out of plastic and denting, like having it sucked in, dented, and then reversing the footage. I think that's really neat. I don't particularly love the lead guy. I think he's kind of a wet blanket, even when he's
cool,
bad, you know.
Me and my fucking car, my best friend car.
And I don't know. I just also don't really find, like, once again, Spooky Ookie, like, car can do other things other than run people over and burst into flames. But, like, I really don't feel like sitting in a car and choking on a hamburger is that scary to me. Like,
okay, you've never been to a Sonic drive-through?
So I mean,
he needed a check. He needed a win,
and he has said, you know, it was the only thing offered to him at the time, and so he took it.
Yeah.
But I do really like the score. I will say that the Christine theme's great.
Okay, there you go.
1984 Starman comes around. It's produced by Michael Douglas. It's funny because he was offered both the script of Starman and E.T. at the same time, and he turned down E.T. for Starman. Michael Douglas did, and Spielberg left and went to go make that elsewhere. And then Michael Douglas handpicked Carpenter. He knew he could direct action well. He knew he needed like romance and action. And so he really relied on him for this. And Carpenter sort of saw this movie as being like, it happened one night, but with space aliens.
Yeah, Starman's a little kooky for me.
Oh, is it? I liked it. I was shocked how much I liked it.
I like it, but a part of me is like, it for me also feels kind of like in the stonery vibe of Dark Star, where it's just like alien grows up and falls in love, and like, God, when he's like, I gave you a baby.
Yes, yeah, kind of weird, right?
There is something I must tell you. I gave you a baby tonight.
It's impossible. I can't have a child. I've been to a doctor, a couple of them.
Believe what I tell you. A boy, baby.
I like their chemistry, Karen Allen and Jeff Bridges. I think it's fun, and I like the special effects in it as well, too.
The balls.
You know, love Jeff Bridges' balls.
Yeah.
Love him. Pendulous. In a brief detour, Ilya Salkind, who produced the Superman films, sees footage of Starman, and he's like, guys, I got this great script. It's called Santa Claus the Movie.
The one with... Okay, yeah.
Yep. Your 1-star review from our Santa Claus on film. Right? Yeah. He goes to Carpenter. He's like, you would be great to make this movie. They have lunch at the Ritz.
Psychotic.
Yeah. John Carpenter's like, I love the idea. Give me 24 hours. He comes back 24 hours and he says, these are my demands. I want 100% of creative control, the right to assumed script writing duties, being able to compose the film's musical score, total editorial control, which he always gets, casting Brian Dennehy as Santa Claus, and $5 million to sign on, which is the same amount that they had offered Dudley Moore to star as the elf in the movie. And Salkind was like, LOL, fuck off.
What I love most about that story is that basically he was like, this is my chance to write Christmas music, and I am not passing it up.
Exactly. And I'm making sure nobody cuts it out.
Right. He was like, this will be my Christmas rock opera.
I still sort of want to see that movie. So he ends up doing Big Trouble in Little China next, actually in 1986. And once again, reteaming Kurt Russell. Complicated. I know people probably want us to talk a lot about it. I don't know. I have no idea what your picks are or whatever. I'm just going to tell you right now, it's not mine. I have a lot of issues with it. I think it's fun. I did like reading about the idea that Carpenter was the one who came in and removed a lot of the racist jokes. And he was the one that was like...
And yet...
Yeah, exactly. He was the one that was like, Jack Burton's not the star of the movie. He's the sidekick, but he doesn't know it. And like, but I also don't want to give him credit for being a white man going in and thinking he can fix the racist system, because racism's so much bigger than that.
Yeah.
And that, so like, really the recourse is just don't make the fucking movie. And also I think he failed to like realize that the problem with white people, I say this as a white person, Louis is not, so you don't have to agree with me, but I'm sure you do, which is that we are so stupid that we will look at the idiot on screen and be like, he's so cool.
Yeah.
Jack Burton, the coolest guy, when he's just a big dumb idiot. Like, one of the most brilliant things that happened in the movie is the start of the big fight scene. He knocks himself out.
Right. That I will say, it's not my pick either for anything.
Oh, yeah.
It was very novel. Like, the most novel thing about it is that the action lead of it is very bad at everything that he's like alleging to do, like wants to do. Like, he thinks he is an action star, and like, it's just like, you are a big dum-dum.
Yeah.
But on the flip of that, it's like every casual Asian person in San Francisco knows Kung Fu.
Right.
Like, literally. Like,
and it's funny because it was like it was a quote unquote big budget movie, but they couldn't do like the wire fu of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So like, it's clear that the actors are like bouncing off a trampoline or like jumping off something high at the start of a scene.
Everything it's very B-list movie. Like, also,
but at the same time, he did make sure to populate it with actual Asian actors, which I do appreciate.
Except for the fact that like this script calls for Kim Cattrall to also be like some like green-eyed ooky spooky gal. I'm like, I was like, you can't even let the one Asian woman like be the girl that they're all after.
It's funny too because he like couldn't get them to agree to Kim Cattrall at first because once again Porky's, which we've talked about before, that she had issues with getting cast after that. So it's funny. I think it's more funny than anything, but also it's just like, my God, the whole time I was watching this, I was like, he's a boy. This is little boy things. Yeah.
Like, it reminded me kind of like Mortal Kombat type stuff. Like, the imagery is very that. It feels very like exoticism.
There's a lot of Orientalism.
There's a lot of like exposition of like explaining why the things and the mystical. Blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, yeah, this just sounds like racist nonsense. It's not like, I don't know. It's problematic.
It's borderline inoffensive, offensive.
Yeah.
I don't know. That movie's always troubled me because I know people who love that movie, and I'm like,
but why? They're so like, literally watch a fucking wuxia film. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Cash or charge?
Oh gosh, cash, I guess. I mean, it's not deductible, is it?
Mrs. O'Toole will take care of your needs.
Boy, you know, I wish these were in color, because what I really am sort of in the mood for is a girl with green eyes. And price is no object, Mrs. O'Toole. Fresh off the boats the way I like them. The more exotic, the better.
Chinese girls do not come with green eyes.
Big Trouble in Little China bombs, so 87, he goes back to low-budget films. He does Prince of Darkness, which is about...
the devil.
The devil, which is goo, living in a cylinder, buried under a church. And
same guy from...
Donald Pleasance.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's good.
I fucking love Donald Pleasance. Yeah, he's amazing.
But there are two guys also who are also in this movie. So who's the older actor who's like the professor in...
Victor Wong,
who's also, again, kind of just showing like he's working with people.
Dennis Dunn, who was also in Big Trouble in Little China, shows up in this. But I do think that we both latched on to our standout, which was Jameson Parker.
Oh my God.
And his mustache.
The mustache work is excellent in the film. There's a couple of like shirtless moments where I was like, Father.
I like Prince of Darkness. I appreciate a weird big swing. It's such a weird fucking movie.
Weird. It reminds me of what was the ghost movies where they're like, a professor wants to come to the house to prove
The Haunting of Hell House.
Yeah. To me, it felt very much like that, but it's like, I'm a professor and you have to come to this church where we have goo.
Yeah.
to like learn about it.
By the way, the goo is an alien that is Satan.
Yes.
And he wants to save his father from the mirror dimension.
Right.
Like,
and the church lied to us.
Yeah.
Evil isn't within, it's actually this goo.
Yeah.
Every particle has an antiparticle. Its mirror image. its negative side. Maybe this universal mind resides in the mirror image instead of in our universe as we wanted to believe. Maybe he's anti-God.
The church lied to us because people would never have accepted aliens.
Right. We need to center humans on and everything.
Not everything's about you.
Sometimes there's alien goo.
Yeah. And They Live, which is 1988, which is both of these films are kind of not well received, and they're very sort of cheaply made, but they have their purpose. I like They Live.
Mm-hmm.
They Live was written. It's funny because right before he did They Live, he like famously said he's not a political filmmaker, and then like saw what was happening in the country, fucking hated Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
And was like, what if I made a movie where the villains were
Republicans?
Yes, well, that's what I was going to say.
I just watched my country turn to the right. I couldn't believe it after all we'd been through. I couldn't believe it. Reagan got elected. So anyway, there was a scream against yuppies and greed and all that. The 80s mythos. The bad guys were aliens, but they really were just kind of bankers, Republicans.
They Live is a movie about this out-of-work man played by Roddy Piper.
Hello.
Who he cast specifically because he looked like a real person. He didn't want like a movie star. And
he was a real person.
like a hard person.
Okay, I was like, when the shirt comes off, I was like,
yeah.
Sir, that is a wrestling man.
Well, Carpenter was also a wrestling fan.
There you go.
So, a wrestling man for a wrestling fan.
Also, there's fully like a moment when they're fighting and like he's giving him a suplex. I'm like...
So They Live is about this out-of-work man who stumbles upon this alien conspiracy through these glasses that he receives that allow him to see that aliens have not just infiltrated Earth, they've been slowly brainwashing humans into being more passive and being consumerist and like keeping it essentially what Republicans want, a docile society so they can control and police them better.
Yeah.
Famously, this movie has a 6.5 minute fight scene, which Carpenter still thinks is hilarious, between Roddy Piper and Keith David, once again reoccurring, where Roddy Piper is just trying to get Keith David to
wear
put
glasses
on the glasses. Exactly.
And it's literally, he's wrestling him.
Yes,
like they are punching and
beat the shit out of each other. The ever-loving shit out of each other.
And I'm like, for the Ray-Bans? But Keith David is like, no, I don't want to wear the glasses. You're not going to make me wear the
and
glasses.
he's like, put on the glasses.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is accurate reenactment. We will now spend the next 6.5 minutes doing the fight. We realize podcast is not a visual medium, so you'll just have to imagine.
Gotcha.
I do also want to say, by the way, They Live has Meg Foster in it, who I genuinely think is one of the most beautiful women in the 80s that just never got the big... She was always like a genre person. She was Evil Lynn from Masters of the Universe.
Well, she's also evil in this movie too.
It's true. He was offered The Exorcist 3, and he met with William Peter Blatty, who had written the book that it's based on and also wrote the original Exorcist, and they argued over the ending, so he didn't make the film. But William Peter Blatty did eventually go on to make direct the movie himself, so maybe, small blessings. And also the ending of the movie sucks, so maybe Carpenter was right. The next steps in his career is sort of, I would say, his return to Hollywood period. In 92, you get Memoirs of an Invisible Man, Village of the Damned in 95, and Escape from LA in 96. We'll touch on all of them very briefly. Memoirs of an Invisible Man is
Chevy Chase.
It's labeled a comedy. I've never found it very funny. I like this movie a lot. But I will say I've never found it very funny. I don't understand why. I think it's like
romance.
Yeah, like a romantic drama that's a little sad. But it's about this man who accidentally gets turned invisible, and sort of about the horrors of what it is to be invisible. And that's what I like about it, and I can see why other people didn't gravitate towards it. But it's also big special effects feat, The invisible nature of Chevy Chase in the movie is really cool and very technical. It absolutely does. But it's when he tells Daryl Hannah in it at one point when he's like, if you can't see me, I don't exist.
Yeah.
It's like the saddest thing in the world.
What's wild is like she even says like, oh, like you can do all these fun things that are invisible, and he's like, no.
You know, I never realized how important it is to be seen, you know, acknowledged. You start questioning whether you exist at all.
Nick. Guess I forgive you for standing me up.
He doesn't go insane like Claude Rains in the original Invisible Man, and he doesn't like
become a predator like fucking Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, in Hollow Man, like he just sort of is like, it sucks.
I can't do anything.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not, you know, he comes up with this scheme to like fraud the stock market.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah,
like Village of the Damned.
Kirstie
Alley. It's a remake of the original Village of the Damned, a town called Midwich, and everybody falls asleep, I think, for like a period of 10 hours. And essentially it's an alien invasion. They impregnate 10 people, and essentially these kids get carried to term because there's a weird dream sequence that convinces the mothers not to get an abortion, which I was like...
a dream ballet.
I was like, could we have spent a little more money on the dream sequence? Maybe we didn't need the body of the guy who died on the grill.
Right.
Like,
No, they needed that.
And the kids are... evil
and the kids all have wigs.
Yes.
Okay.
They love their wigs. They love a look.
Yeah.
The kids are evil aliens who are unfeeling, and they're there to sort of study the humans. One assumes for maybe an invasion at some point.
Yeah, they can like mind control, read your mind.
Right, exactly. Like I said, it's based off an earlier film, and one of the reasons why they even want to remake it was in the earlier film, you couldn't even say the word abortion. You couldn't even say the word pregnant.
They sure did say abortion this time.
Yeah, this is the problem with this movie is there's a memory of a better film.
I mean, I think this movie has a lot of problems. I think.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Like, they're out of nowhere, he's like, I can block their thoughts by thinking of a wall.
I mean, that's very much like the original. Where
I was like, what? I got that these babies could fucking make bitches put their hands in boiling waters and like out, and all of a sudden it's like, I thought of the ocean and they can't get in. And I was like, I don't know if these kids are as strong as they think they are.
But yeah, as you mentioned, Kirstie Alley plays a government doctor who's the one who figured out they're aliens and blah, blah, blah. It's stuff happens. It's another movie that he says he took for a paycheck. He needed the...
Well, like, I think, like, this movie, the Memoirs of Invisible Man movie, they feel, like, studio-y.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, this is kind of spooky. Let's just get his, like, sensibility on it. A part of me is like, do we not think, like, there's some Universal execs who are like, we need Kirstie Alley in this?
Yeah.
You do not get to choose. Like, there's no way in 1995 Universal was going to let him get away with not putting Kirstie Alley in this movie.
And let me tell you, she's certainly doing something in that movie.
Oh, she's Kirstie Alley about.
Yeah, she is like, oh boy. It was at that moment I was like, has Kirstie Alley ever been a good actor?
It Takes Two.
And then the aforementioned Escape from LA in 96, which was really done under Kurt Russell's suggestion. He really wanted to play Snake Plissken again.
I didn't watch this one.
Oh, okay. It's a sequel. LA is now a prison. He has to go in, save the president's daughter. He has 9 hours because there's a experimental virus coursing through his veins.
They got him again.
Yeah.
They said, haha.
Yeah.
Surprise.
It's so funny because there's a lot of stuff that they do to cover for that. Like at one point he's like, which one of these guns are loaded? And then like tries to shoot them and they're holograms and they're like, we expected as much, Mr. Pliskin. And a lot of it is, it's much more fun than the first movie. And even Carpenter has said he thinks in the grand scheme of things, people will acknowledge it's a better movie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's necessarily the case. It's definitely curbs a lot. I mean, because it is kind of a remake.
Right.
Even though it's a new movie. There's issues. I mean, because you didn't watch it, so I can't even really talk about Pam Grier's character.
Oh,
Pam Grier.
Pammy?
Yeah, she plays a character named...
Who we're going to see again later.
Yeah, she plays a character named Hershey, who's a trans woman.
I already don't like it. Oh,
yeah.
It got worse. It got worse.
Who they altered her voice so it's very deep. And
more things change, more they stay the same, huh, Carjack? Glad to see you're still packing my gun between your legs.
Hold on, honey.
You owe me. You bolted on me back in Cleveland.
Hershey, you were in Cleveland?
Oh, yeah. With me and Texas Mike O'Shea, except you looked a little different in those days, Carjack.
You get one thing straight, Pliskin. I'm no longer Carjack Malone. Appreciatless Palmas, the most drop-dead to die for number you ever laid that one eye.
I don't give a fuck what you are. I want to know what the hell happened to you in
I was
Cleveland.
called away on urgent business. I got caught. You didn't.
It doesn't feel like a cash grab because it's very clear that everybody behind the movie wanted to make it, but they did apparently rely, like, there's a lot of really bad CG and whatnot, and apparently that is because the company they hired to do the CG had never done computer graphics for a movie before.
I feel like that's like a hard time for CG anyway. Like 96, they were like, "Ooh, I learned a new program." Like,
Yeah.
and it's just,
I mean, these are a wackadoodle cartoony. Like, he rides a wave with Peter Fonda at one point that it's just like, you guys could have did this in stop motion. More realistic. But, you know, I mean, one of my favorite things in it is Bruce Campbell plays the Surgeon General of LA with like massive, like prosthetics to look like a mannequin essentially, and he runs like the bad plastic surgery clinic where like everybody's had so much plastic surgery like their muscles are.
They said, what is it something about LA that we could really
It's funny because he said that, you know, he hates New York and that's why he was able to, but I really like, I think Escape from LA is much meaner to LA than Escape from New York is, because even in Escape from New York you're kind of like, yeah
that's New York,
that's New York, I see it. He does the anthology film Body Bags with Toby Hooper, which was actually a failed TV pilot. In the Mouth of Madness in 95 with Sam Neill, which is the one time he really makes a Lovecraftian horror movie. I think it's great. It's maybe not all successful. It's about an insurance adjuster who goes looking for a lost author who's even though he's an H.P. Lovecraft type person, he's also very Stephen King. He finds the fictional town this author has been writing about this whole time and slowly realizes that he's in
the book.
Sutter Kane's book. Great special effects in that movie too. Just really, it's funny because I mentioned Ari Aster a couple times. Ari Aster has said it's his favorite John Carpenter movie, and if that movie were made nowadays, it would be a huge hit because it's what every indie horror movie director is making.
Right.
Vampires in 1998 with James Wood as the leader of a band of vampire hunters in league with the Catholic Church.
Boo.
Yeah.
Boo.
Yeah. Jamie Lee Curtis calls him up in 1998 to try and get him to do Halloween H2O. He says she's trying to get the band back together, as many people in the band as she possibly can. And he says, great, I'll do it. Give me 10 million. Jesus. And Mustafa Akkad was like, no. And he's like, that's what you owe me for the original Halloween. And he's like, fuck no. And doesn't do Halloween H2O.
Jamie Lee Curtis is like, so he said no.
2001, he does Ghosts of Mars, which is essentially just a remake of Assault on Precinct 13. It was originally written to be the third Snake Plissken film. When Escape from LA bombs, they're like, Snake Plissken's written out. Here's a new character named Desolation Jones. And the studio is like, cast Ice Cube. And he's like, I guess, I don't know.
See, that's what I'm talking about, though. Like, cast Kirstie Alley, it's 95.
Yeah.
Cast Ice Cube, it's 2001. Like, it feels like he is in a place where, because horror is so different now.
Yeah.
And like, he isn't really, I don't know, like when I think of John Carpenter now, after watching all these movies, I don't even think he's like in the slasher game. I think he's like in the like disgusting, gross game.
See, I don't think, I mean, I do think there is a part of him that does like the gross stuff, but I don't think it's solely that. But I do I think that he likes showing you things that you've maybe never seen before in a movie. And sometimes that's pretty gross and gets really gross and weird.
Yeah. And so for me, or I'm thinking about like this time period, like it's very rarely is he giving the chance to succeed, I think. Because these movies, I'm like, why is he doing this? Or like, it's clear that he's like doing this in service of someone else's vision or someone else's story. Weird times for John.
But Ghost of Mars is this film about this Mars colony where this prisoner, Desolation Jones, is being brought to, and suddenly they're under siege by these parasitic ghost aliens that are of Mars. It's funny because as much as I think John Carpenter would consider himself a liberal.
Mm-hmm.
But I did see him say like the reason he never directed a Western is because in the 90s there were all these liberal Westerns like Dances with Wolves, and he's not interested in telling that story. And when I was watching Ghost of Mars, I was like, so the bad guys are the indigenous people.
Yeah.
And we're rooting for the invaders.
They're like, this is our home now. I was like, oh.
They literally say that in the movie. Yeah.
Yes. I was like, okay.
Also, the movie looks bad. The movie just looks bad.
Yeah.
That movie's a huge disaster. He starts to move away from directing. People start giving him checks. Assault on Precinct 13, The Fog get remade. Halloween, Rob Zombie's Halloween 1 and 2 get remade, come out. He does a television show in 2005 called Masters of Horror on Showtime. He directs 2 episodes that are essentially mini films. He does one called Cigarette Burns, which I'm a huge fan of and really think is like one of the best things he directed in years. And then he does one called Pro-Life, which its heart was in the right place.
Okay.
Because it's about a woman who like comes in to try and get an abortion because she has a child of Satan. When
that happens,
pro-life terrorists come in and try and stop the abortion, and
she's like, no, this is Satan.
Yeah, she's like, guys,
I'm trying to abort Satan. Hello.
In 2010, he makes his final film, The Ward. John Carpenter's The Ward. It's the first film he shoots. He tries shooting differently. Exists.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did not get that far.
I hate to say this. I made this film. I made a short film that has the exact same plot as this in college. It's not a new idea. I knew I was ripping it off at the time that I made it. So it's one of those things where it's just like,
he's like, listen, I want to make some more music, guys. I'm really just focusing on my music career right now. It's hard being a director, actor, musician.
Over the years, there's been lots of projects that he's involved with that, that don't come to fruition. He does some test footage for a Dark Child movie based off the comic book. And as you mentioned before, he finally gets involved in the new Halloween movies. I do want to mention, by the way, his involvement in the previous Halloween movies. He actually writes the script for Halloween 2, and he's like, it's awful.
Huh.
So he even admits, he's like, I've already made this movie. Why would I do it again? When they did Halloween 3 and they were trying something different, he got involved in that one. And then they were like, nope, this was a disaster. So that's when he left the series, was Halloween 3. But he doesn't direct another one.
So he has no involvement with Jason Takes Manhattan?
That's Friday the 13th.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
You know why it's on my mind? Because we got a story about it today in the paper.
In terms of his personal life, he meets Adrienne Barbeau on the set of the 1978 film Somebody's Watching Me, and they're married from January 1st, 1979 to 1984. Barbeau goes on to star in The Fog and Escape from New York while they're married, and they have one son together, John Cody Carpenter. He has been married to producer Sandy King since 1990. She produced all of his later films, In the Mouth of Madness, Village of the Damned, Vampires, Ghosts of Mars. And then she'd been involved in his earlier films, Starman, Big Trouble in Little China, Prince of Darkness, They Live. He has a commercial pilot's license. He says he loves helicopters. I even saw an interview with him where somebody was like, an audience question was like, I showed my girlfriend 3 movies and she said the only thing she got out of it was John Carpenter's loves helicopters. And he was like, yeah, she's right.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's true. Now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, yep, there was a helicopter in the thing. Helicopter, yep.
The other thing that he really loves is video games. He thinks video games are the future.
It's fabulous, and it's in infancy. And storytelling through video games, Roger Ebert said it will never be art. I think he's wrong. He was wrong. It's just beginning.
He's still alive. I don't want to, downplay him. Since 2017, he's actually done 3 albums of Lost Themes. He started touring. He's now a musician, full-time, essentially. His son, Cody, also tours with him. Cool. And so he's doing that, and he's living off the money of Halloween. I will say, kind of an ornery man. I've seen interviews.
It seems like...
Yeah, I've seen interviews with him where he's like, I could have played the game better.
Yeah.
But, that's not who I am.
A final cut, obviously, is the most important thing any director can have. Isn't given, but you try to seize it. If you can't get it in writing, you seize control from the set. You just got to do it. You got to do it. I have to do it. Other people are more successful working with others, not me.
I saw an interview where they were like, what makes a good scary movie? And he's like, well, they got to be scary.
Yeah.
And I was like, and she's like, okay, cool. So
But that's John Carpenter, you know? He's allowed to be who he is.
He's not playing games.
Yeah, yeah.
He's getting checks.
And as I said, he's a legacy. He's an icon and perfect for the Halloween season.
Yeah, I will say, as like squirmy as I was, a lot of the squirmy like stuff works. Like it's purposeful.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate it.
But anyways, why don't we get into our picks? Why don't we start with our 1-star reviews and find out which of John Carpenter's things are maybe the real villain.
Okay. My 1-star review is 2001's Ghost of Mars.
It's real bad. I've heard people defend it, and I'm like, why? Why are you wasting your time?
What's wild to me is that, like, again, this is the time period when, like, bad things or evil things just meant, like, I don't know, like Queen of the Damned, like all those movies where it's like bad things are like, you like fucking metal, rock and roll.
Yeah, do you like new metal?
Yeah, new metal.
Do you guys like Linkin Park? Do you want some rap rock?
Yeah, it's very that. And I'm like, okay, just because they have like nose rings and like weird like face like tattoos doesn't mean they're evil. Like, but okay, work. And also not even that, but like the ghosts, the titular ghosts of Mars, they're like a sand creature thing.
Yeah.
They're a ghost, if you will. And they go in and infect a person. And because they become infected, these people sharpen their teeth and like put fucking rings and like rods in their faces. And I'm like, why is this the expression of evil? Like that,
right.
That's very like native as shit.
Right. It feels very like indigenous. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Like, but like, ooh, spooky. And so like, there's, this is fucked up shit about like nativists and indigenous people, but also like just very, I saw a youth wearing baggy black pants and like had a weird fucking earring and they're evil. Like, what is that? I hate that genre of like, and it's specifically in the early aughts where like, because good was like pop music and like, and the bad was new metal, which new metal is not good, but like it shouldn't signify like
right.
evil. Like it's like in the same way like leather and like slick shiny shit is like it all just doesn't work for me. This movie is about like we mentioned, Earth has colonized Mars or is in the process of colonizing Mars, but in the process they have unleashed these beings that live there, and essentially these beings are protecting themselves and infecting these humans, but the way that it is expressed is that they become like tribal and it's just really fucked up. And the whole movie is being told by this woman,
Natasha Henstridge of Species fame.
Yes, correct. The most generic white woman.
She's awful. Horrible.
Yeah.
Like cannot deliver a line to save her life in this movie.
Yeah.
I really don't understand you at all, Desolation.
Only one looking out for me is me.
Doesn't that bother you?
Nothing bothers me. I stopped worrying a long time ago.
Don't you believe in anything?
I believe in staying alive.
Yeah, but for what?
Stick around, I might let you know one day.
And also, again, she gets infected, but somehow is able to like fight her way through it because she loves Coke or whatever future Coke is. But also, like, there's so many like problematic things about this movie where Ice Cube, it's Ice Cube.
Yeah.
Ice Cube, who he's a bad guy, a villain in this movie where that is, they're going to go like, again, kind of like you said, themes of Assault on Precinct 13. They're going to transfer this bad guy, but then the ghosts attack. And so he is on their side to protect themselves. And I'm like, again, though, they made like Ice-T. They've turned him and his gang, like these thugs that are joining up with the fucking police to like help win the day. The police, which is also, what's her face? Pam Grier.
Yeah. Pam Grier, who's like once again, I gave him credit for the Adrienne Barbeau thing, but Pam Grier, who's like an aggressive, predatory lesbian.
Isn't the whole thing that there's like a lot of lesbians now?
Yeah, yeah.
Like Jason Statham is like the titular one hot guy who like wants to fuck everything.
Jason Statham with a little bit of hair.
A little bit of hair. I was like, oh my God. But he's hitting on the blonde lady because he's like, there's not a lot of us breeders left.
Yeah.
And I'm like, cool. So Clea Duvall is also in this. Also, like,
poor Clea Duvall.
I know. Like, I was like, girl, you deserve so much more than this. But like, yeah, weird choices. Like, everyone's lesbian, but like also predatory about it.
Yeah.
And then like the native shit, like we mentioned earlier, this is our home now.
And that's the other thing that sort of like sets it apart from Assault on Precinct 13, because like you said, you were sort of confused about where this gang came from and where they, and it's like, fine, like the othering of the gang, maybe not great, but it's also like, oh, it's like a force versus a force. And once again, this feels like these are just creatures defending their land.
Yeah. It also, like you said, looks very bad.
Yeah. Ice Cube famously hates the movie. He was very excited to work with John Carpenter, and he's like, I hate that movie. It looks terrible. Like, yeah.
It looks like really cheap. Like the fighting looks really bad. I mean, not that I'm expecting the world, but like for even the time, I'm like, God, it doesn't look expensive. It is just all around bad.
So my film's not going to be very far off from yours. It's actually going to be the one prior to that, which is John Carpenter's Vampires from 1998.
Hate it so much.
Yeah. Starring James Woods. And this is going to be I'm going to do this very quickly. He's a vampire hunter. He works for the Vatican. His team is killed. He's decided to go for revenge against the master vampire who did it. But that master vampire has a mysterious black cross that's going to make him be able to walk in daylight, and then the earth is fucked. And that's literally the plot of the movie. This movie's almost 2 fucking hours long.
Yeah.
The plot is stretched so thin. On top of that, James Woods, fuck him.
Homophobia!
Yeah, he plays the main character. Daniel Baldwin plays his sidekick.
I was say they picked one of the Baldwins, the lesser Baldwins.
Well, it's funny. Alec Baldwin was casted and then couldn't do it and recommended his brother.
Why?
Cheryl Lee from Twin Peaks fame, who I feel the worst for in this movie. This movie is homophobic. It's sexist. It's all bad altogether. It's funny, John Carpenter said he had a good time working with James Woods, who was famously difficult to work with, because he made him promise he could do one take as it's written and then improv the rest. And he was like, oh, the improvs are so funny. No, they're not.
They're really not.
Guess what?
You can tell when they're happening.
Yeah. His improv is saying faggot.
Yeah.
Like,
are you hard right now? You got a hard on and I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Have you ever seen a vampire? No. Well, first of all, they're not romantic, all right? It's not like they're a bunch of fucking fags hopping around in rented formal wear and seducing everybody in sight with cheesy Eurotrash accents, all right? Forget whatever you've seen in the movies. They don't turn into bats. Crosses don't work. Garlic? You want to try garlic? You stand there with garlic around your neck. One of these buggers will bend you fucking over and take a walk up your Strata Chocolata while he's sucking the blood out of your neck, all right?
Some of these things are like little boy things.
Right.
Like,
and I agree with you. And I especially agree with you about this movie. And that's what this way, it's funny because he said, he was tired of vampires being treated as like gothic. He's like, vampires, if they existed, wouldn't care about humans. They would just be feeding on them constantly. And it's like, well, that doesn't work either, because they would have overrun the earth.
Isn't there like right? But then they try to explain like, oh, but they can't know, like they stay small, like, and but then. Meanwhile, they're partying with like a bunch of babes and like freely talking about how they're vampire hunters. I was like, what is going? The universe that he has created for vampires here is super weird. I hate that he has to explain like garlic doesn't do anything. Like they're explaining the rules of like what vampires are, and I'm like, okay,
they're like, it's basically sunlight and cutting their heads off and putting a stake in their heart. Like, that's it.
And that poor gal who's like basically just being drained the entire time.
Yeah. Well, Cheryl Lee, as I mentioned, she famously was on Twin Peaks, and Twin Peaks, a lot of the times all she got to do was scream. And I felt like on this movie, all she got to do was scream. There's an entire scene where Daniel Baldwin has her in a hotel room and is just constantly like slapping her around.
Yeah. And she's like naked.
Yeah. And it just feels like exploitation of the worst kind. And like, frankly, we know John Carpenter is not a sexist. So it's frustrating to watch this and be like, I can see, like, a film critic called him out, was like, if John Carpenter's not a misogynist, you would be hard pressed if you watch this movie to realize that. And so I think this movie contains every bad thing that people accuse him of and it's amped up to 11, and it's once again that very like new metal, like,
and yes,
like the villains are like, even though they're not, you know, gothic, and they're still like black coats and long hair and pale skin,
a lot of like chains.
Yeah, exactly.
What's wild to me is that like for someone who is so like every detail, everything is like my vision, but then he just like lets all this shit slide and goes. And I mean, like, this is the man who's putting fucking like red Kool-Aid in every fountain when like vampires are around for like, I don't know, like vampires were here. But at this is letting James Wood just like make all these dick jokes.
Yeah.
And like letting all this really fucked up homophobic sexist shit just like go by, and he's like, yes, this is my vision. Like, I don't understand it. I don't get it.
And on top of everything else, the film's boring.
Yeah.
It's really boring. It's stretched so thin from its plot of moving to point A to point B to point C.
Plot
like
twist.
The
church was in it.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's the other thing too. You're hiding like magical black cross for years, and you just sort of put it in like on display in a church.
Cover it up or something.
Yeah, it's something. Like, throw a sheet on it. God damn it. If I have to give the movie one piece of credit, I will say Gary B. Kibbe's cinematography is really great. I think it's one of Carpenter's best looking films, and that budget, he was able to stretch that portion of it in terms of lighting, and that, like, I'll give it that. And also the film was his only financially successful movie of the 90s.
Wow.
So yeah.
Homophobia was very, very successful, very lucrative.
Was there anything else that you saw that you didn't particularly like?
Let me see. What am I? Certainly there had to be something. But those, I mean, yeah, I was going between vampires and so I think Big Trouble in Little China is like a little like hard to stomach. I think Village of the Damned.
Oh yeah, Village of the Damned is real bad.
I was like that like portion of time, I was like, does he even like what he's doing right now? Does he know what he's doing?
He said after he made Escape from LA, he didn't want to make movies anymore, and then vampires came along, and so that reinvigorated him, and he had a good time on that set. But once again, like, maybe his like personal taste is a little off too, because, well, when we get to our 5-star reviews, I'll talk about that. But.
Okay. Should we do 5-star reviews now?
Absolutely.
I think my 5-star review is They Live. I think They Live is the perfect, like, encapsulation of John Carpenter's ethos of that, like, humans are the evil, like, we are the horrors. And
the horrors.
And the horrors. Especially the horrors. And it's also, you know, him using his stylish eye, you know, his sense of atmosphere, put all together in this one kind of like candy coated film. It feels very throwback and retro in a way.
I always forget that They Live is as late 80s as it is, because it feels very 70s.
Yeah. But even like the idea, like it's like Stepfordian. It feels like Mars Attacks, kind of.
I can see that.
And also the pure insanity of Roddy Piper as the lead, who's like pretty good. Like, you know, because I
don't know if I can follow you down on that
I
road.
think he's pretty good because the movie is like he's putting on glasses and like the world turns into black and white.
His line delivery is a little questionable. And I know the famous line,
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
But like really, but like the one where he's like
every one of those moments though.
Yeah,
every single one of them.
Lady, you've got scaby face or whatever he says to her. Like
yeah. But like I think because there are so many, like John Carpenter wrote these one-liners for him, and it was like, we're to set the camera down, and he's just gonna like look like a fucking mountain of a man, and just like. Why is he running into this bank and doing the famous line, like, and I'm all out of bubble gum? Like, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? It's so weirdo. But for me, it works just because the movie is so, like, nonsensical. And, like, when it's really, to me, I laughed a lot in this movie. Like, the aliens turn and look, and he's like, ugh.
I love the design of the aliens. And he said that he just wanted the aliens to look like people with their skin torn off. Like that's sort of, you know.
But even like that, how the whole idea of like he's like going to see the newspapers, and the newspapers are like conform,
obey. The very famous, you know, is it Shepherd Fairy or whatever, the guy that did all the obey stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like that was inspired by that.
It's very heavy-handed, but I think it works. I think the whole movie is heavy-handed.
I agree. No, I think that's the strength of the movie. I think if that movie was going for subtlety at any point, it would have failed. And it's funny because there's been rumblings about a remake of it for at least a decade. And apparently the last iteration of the remake, they decided they want to take the political stuff out because the short story it's based on isn't political.
What are they going to put in there instead?
I don't know, but that would be real boring.
Yeah. I don't know. I think he's like, you can feel the inspiration from him. Like he's clearly, and he's talked about, he's like, Reagan fucking, like at the time I was fucking furious and like I couldn't believe, and
he's like, I hated the yuppies. I hated what was happening in the country.
He's such a hippie. He's such a like, you know, and it's, to me, it works on all levels. Is it his scariest movie? No.
I don't think he's even going for scares really.
But like, I think the like existential dread of it all, like you're telling me, and not only are they, you know, brainwashing other humans to like join them, but like the idea that they could pay off these rich humans to get on board,
to conform.
It's like, and these rich humans are like, this is the future, like they're paying us money, like that's true horror shit. Like, and I think it's on some levels like the most scary because it's like, fuck, we're in capitalism and that's the true like evil. So yeah, that's They Live.
My favorite is, and I also went off a little off the beaten path because obviously Halloween is classic for a reason. Obviously The Thing is classic for a reason. I love those movies and I've seen those movies so many times that I didn't even rewatch them for this because you
got them in the bag.
Yeah, I can picture them in my head. I can tell you everything about them. So, but my favorite John Carpenter movie, the one that I always come back to, is The Fog. Mm-hmm. I love The Fog because it's so simple and it's so, you know, it starts out like a fairy tale. It's a sea captain telling kids a story. Famously, one of the reshoots because the movie wasn't long enough. So they added this whole opening sequence. I think the music is so atmospheric. It's just this really like, once again, like 3 or 4 notes on a synthesizer, but it's more contemplative, it's less hectic, and it's really going for that old haunted house feel. As I mentioned before, it's Antonio Bay's 100th anniversary, and there's all these disparate characters. You have Jamie Lee Curtis, who's a hitchhiker, coming in, and she gets picked up by Tom Atkins, and they have like a little romantic subplot. And it's funny because John Carpenter apparently like based that sort of on The Birds because Tippi Hedren's character in The Birds shows up, and that's when everything starts to go crazy in the town. And, you know, you have Adrienne Barbeau, who's this radio DJ who broadcasts from this lighthouse. So she's there not only to keep the town entertained, but to also like talk to the ships to keep them safe. And what's funny is Adrienne Barbeau, outside of the scene with her son, never interacts with another person in the movie, like never interacts with physically. Yeah. She talks to people on the phone. She talks to them over the radio, but she never physically has a scene with anybody else but her child in the movie. Janet Leigh, who's like planning the town's 100th anniversary, and her assistant, who have a very funny relationship.
This town should be proud of its past, but trying to get anyone involved in community affairs is like pulling teeth. Better get the estimates ready for the council meeting next month.
Yes, ma'am.
Sandy, you're the only person I know who can make yes, ma'am sound like screw you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. And Hal Holbrook as this priest who's sort of this like alcoholic, but also weirdly sort of like father of this town, this rock of this town, whose family has been in this place for ages. So when this mystical occurrence happens, this weird thing that 100 years from then, no one would even be able to be like, and that, you know, it would be a story itself. It would be this old ghost tale. And I love that. And I do think the movie's particularly spooky. I think it's got a lot of atmosphere. And like you said, it is violent, but it's not violent in a way that's like gratuitous.
No. I think it's, to me, it's it's weird because Halloween obviously is known as a slasher, and it's all about like, you know, people will say it define the genre of like slasher, but like The Fog, I think it's just more gross and like it's no one's like being slashed per se. It's like grabbing hands and like there are people who are being killed, but like it's not. It's more kind of like I don't even know when the fucking pirate ghosts like show up and their eyes are glowing. It's not about like, oh, ha, I got you and now you're murdered. It's like your fucking spirit is mine because you have wronged me.
Yeah. And I love that. And I love the idea of that, like, it's funny because in a way it's the reverse of everything we were talking about in Ghost of Mars, which is not to say that these pirates, these leprous pirates were indigenous to this place, but they were the people there that these other people schemed against, and they're like, hey, guess what? Your chickens have fucking come to roost.
Yeah.
And like, sorry that it took us 100 years, but we're going to claim our victims. We're going to claim our gold.
But also like it's the parallel to Ghost of Mars is really good because it's not, these are ghosts.
Right.
Why are they showing up with fucking guns and razor teeth? Right. In The Fog, they come back as spooky ghosts.
Right.
In Ghosts of Mars, they're like Limp Bizkit. Like, I don't get it. Like,
I agree. Yeah. No, it doesn't. And that's, I think it's so funny that in doing this process and doing the research to find out that John Carpenter doesn't love The Fog is wild to me because I really think it's, you know, maybe, and maybe it's because it is such a throwback and I do have such a love of like those Universal Studios monster movies, but that's what it feels like to me. It feels like something akin to that or like the next step from that. But like as much as it has one foot in the past, it really like moving things forward. I've said on this show probably on every Halloween episode, my favorite thing about a horror movie is the scare you see coming. I don't like jump scares. I find them boring. There are jump scares in this movie, but I also think that a lot of times there's the scares you see coming. There's the knocking at the door. There's the people, like when the fog creeps in.
Well, you see that fucking fog, you know shit's about to go down.
Exactly.
They got that fog machine going right behind you, sir. So goodbye to you.
But yeah, I don't know. I truly think the fog is, you know, I think people talk about it as being one of his, but I think it's both simultaneously like classic and underrated and deserves its chance to be placed in that sort of canon when you talk about John Carpenter.
Right. Can I just add to They Live? I just remembered this is the movie when like it kind of comes together where he's like, oh wait, blue lives don't matter. Poor people are being like oppressed.
Yeah, the police
literally
are villains in the movie.
Are aliens who are oppressing the poor people who know that the aliens are out there and trying. Anytime the poor people are like making breakthroughs, and like, that's when I was like, oh, it has all clicked. Like again, it felt like his social commentary came together. I just remember that.
No, you're right too. And yeah, and I mean, I think I'm glad that both of us picked neither of the obvious choices. Because, once again, not that there's anything wrong with the Halloween, The Thing. They are masterpieces, in my opinion. I don't know how you feel about them, but they've been talked about.
Yeah,
they've been talked about. Yeah.
I mean, I'll say right now that I think The Thing is like probably my second favorite.
Yeah, and mine too. Actually, I'll be perfectly honest. The Thing is amazing.
I think it's him and Kurt Russell at their like best. Yeah. Again, I think it's like the perfect blend of horror and social commentary. And it really fucks you up though, because at the beginning you're like, why are they shooting that dog? Don't.
Yeah.
And then you're like, they fucking should have killed that dog.
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny too, because I think the reason people don't associate that with, like, when people talk about Kurt Russell and John Carpenter, like they might mention The Thing, but like I feel like that people like really latch on to like the Jack Burtons, the Snake Plisskens of it all, and I think it's because the finality of The Thing is just like that's it for that character.
Yeah, totally.
But he's very good. I mean, the whole like doing the tapes, the like nobody trusts each other.
Yeah, when they're testing the blood. Oh, I jumped. I was all around my room when I watched that movie. It's a good one.
Yeah. Highly recommend. Was it, besides The Thing, was there anything else that you saw that you... I will always go to bat, and once again, I know it's no one else's favorite, but Memoirs of Invisible Man, just because I think it looks so good, and it's so interesting, and like, yeah, maybe like Chevy Chase and Daryl Hannah is, you know, it's certainly no, you know, Hepburn.
It's Silly Billy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was my favorite or one of my favorites. I think if you want a little John Carpenter romance, I think Starman is the way to go.
Yeah. Starman's great.
It's moody. I also think Jeff Bridges in there is giving a good performance of like alien but learning, but also, like you said, good road trip movie.
I think also if you're like, if you've seen The Thing and you want to round out the Apocalypse trilogy, you'd have a worse time than watching like Prince of Darkness and In the Mouth of Madness. Both are fun, both are weird and gross, and campy. You know, for being a straight man, John Carpenter does get camp.
Oh yeah, I can't remember one of the first ones I was watching. I was like, this is Camperella. I mean, They Live is pretty campy.
I mean, The Fog is pretty campy as well too. Yeah. So
Prince of Darkness was fun. Very disgusting. Disgusting.
And Someone's Watching Me is the other one I'll put in the plug-in for, which is the TV movie. It's like an hour and a half. It's fun. Lauren Hutton's great in it. But yeah, let's get out of our 5-star reviews and let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the fast forward.
So we have a new Halloween movie coming out
this Friday, nonetheless. So that you can both watch in theaters or you can stream on Peacock. And you know what? I read what Jason Blum had to say about that. And I fucking love it because he was like, my movie Freaky came out and nobody fucking saw it. And then everybody watched it on HBO Max as soon as it came on HBO Max. And so I'm not going to let that happen again. He's like, I'm proud of this movie. Go to the theater if you want to see it. Yeah. But guess what? If you don't want to go to the theater, stream it.
Here it is. Yeah. I like that very much. I think there are a couple of Carpenter movies on Peacock I think you can watch right now. So go do that.
You know, he is putting out music. He just
he released an album like last year or something?
Yeah. There was a single came out at the beginning of the year, January 8th, 2021.
There you go.
So obviously John Carpenter himself isn't slowing down. He's 73, which isn't that old anymore. And so, I mean, he looks old. I will say that. He's
a white man.
Yeah, and he smokes a lot. So I don't know if he's still smoking, but I saw an interview from like, I want to say at least just like 5 years ago. And he started it by lighting a cigarette. And I was like, Jesus Christ, buddy. Like, somebody couldn't get you the patch.
Yes. A nice nicotine gum.
So I will say, if you're a kid listening to this, first of all, why are you a kid listening to this? But second of all, don't smoke.
Don't smoke.
It's not cool.
I guess it cannot be understated how groundbreaking Halloween was.
Yeah.
And everyone that followed. Like, there certainly were horror movies before.
Right.
But
he laid out the template, you know.
Like, we wouldn't have the Jasons, the Freddy Kruegers, like, all of that came after that. And which kind of, like, led us to what I would say is our, like, the millennial version of that, like, with the Screams, I Know What You Did Last Summer. Like, there is a legacy of horror filmmaking that you can trace literally to John Carpenter.
There's a reason why Wes Craven, who was also considered a top tier genre filmmaker in Scream, you know, they're watching Halloween. They're not watching one of his movies.
Right.
They're watching a John Carpenter film.
Right. And so now, you know, and for as many bombs as he had, and he had so many bombs, so many of them have been revisited.
Exactly. It's a reappraisal of everything. I was thinking about that actually on my walk today, because I'm an old man who walks. And I was like, what must it be like to make all of these movies? And he's even said, he's like, every one of my movies in one way or another was shit upon when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
And what must it be like to make all these films and have them so reviled by whatever people, and then years later, when you're in your golden age, to have everybody be like, no, you're a genius.
Yeah.
No, you did all this. Like, yeah, I would be bitter too. I would be a little bit angry. And like you said, he doesn't give a shit. He's proud of the movies he made. He doesn't care what people said about them. But it must be fucking wild to be like, I I saw this when I made them. Why didn't you?
Right.
Where were you?
He's like, now I'm 75 and can't do shit about it.
Yeah.
Like, just pay me for my fucking grief.
Right.
You know, when I was a kid, I decided at one point I wanted to be a movie director and have a career in directing movies. And I got to do that. And a lot of very talented people never got the chance to do that. So I'm really lucky. I'm really lucky.
He is just like now getting his flowers, essentially. And you know what? Flowers away, honey.
Absolutely. I just hope they don't turn into like some weird tentacle monster.
He loves tentacles also. It's the head within the head and tentacles everywhere.
That's probably why he loves video games too, because he's like, everybody else wants to do tentacles and heads. And...
Yeah, those were his people. Do you think he'll make another movie?
I don't think he'll direct another movie.
Yeah.
I think he'll maybe continue involvement in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if they'll all necessarily be remakes of his stuff, but I also think he doesn't want to do anything that's crazy hands-on. I think it's very much what he's saying about showing up, collecting a paycheck, and saying hi to everybody and leaving. And I think the Halloween movies happened to excite him because they had an exciting production team that wanted his involvement and wanted his input and was willing to pay him for his input as well.
Right. These are the Blumhouse people, right?
Yeah. And so I think that's what set this separate thing apart. I don't know if that will always be the case. I mean, that's like, when the prequel / remake of The Thing came out in the early 2000s, they didn't involve him at all because I think it's Universal just like owns that. So then they were just like, whatever. And yeah, so I think he, if he wants to be involved in something, he'll get involved. But
yeah,
I think he's just sort of enjoying it. Like I saw him in an interview talk about having to fly to Reykjavik, Iceland from LA. And he's like, it's 11-hour flight. Fuck that. Like,
no, I don't think so.
Yeah. So like,
are we going to zoom it or?
Yeah. So like I think he enjoys his time, the time that he has left. And he's like, I'm incredibly lucky to have made the films that I made, to have had the control that I made. And I'm proud of the things that I put out. And really, in the end of it, isn't that all you can hope for?
There you go. I mean, in a couple like legacy iconic movies, no big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a lot of fun. I certainly would never have watched a lot of these movies without this episode. But, at the end of the day, I was surprised pleasantly. And yeah, Gavin, I guess we are the true horrors. Horrors.
Yeah. We're the true horrors and horrors.
Evil is within, folks.
But if you want to contact us, evil people, us evil horrors,
yes,
you can always find us on Twitter at The Mixed Reviews.
We're also on Facebook. Just type in The Mixed Reviews.
If you want to email us, you can email us at reviewsmixed@gmail.com.
We're also on Instagram at _mixed_reviews.
And if you want to listen to our episodes, including our back catalog of spooky Halloween season episodes, you can always find us on a plethora of podcast apps. We're on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, Amazon, all of them. And if you do listen to us on Apple Podcasts, please stop by, leave us a 5-star rating, and write us a little review. We will read it on the show. It really helps us out and gets us to the evil algorithm so other people can find us and obey.
And obey. We only have 100 episodes for you guys to like parse through, so get to it.
Yeah, only a small number like that. So... But thank you so much for listening to our John Carpenter dissection. We actually already have our next episode lined up, and we will come back in 2 weeks to share it with you.
Bye.